Hey folks, welcome to this first look at Worldographer 2025. I'm Joe Wetzel, the programmer behind Worldographer. We've had Worldographer out since 2017, 2018, thereabouts, and we've been making steady changes and additions to it. But as anybody who develops software for a while knows, sometimes to make some larger changes, you need to kind of re-architect the things a good bit more. And so that's what we're doing here as part of this this project for Worldographer 2025. It's a big update where we're putting in a whole bunch of new features that are allowed or we're able to do because of the significant changes that we're making to the architecture. What you see in front of you is a map that I just generated with just some checkboxes, a world map, of course, with Worldographer. You can also do city village maps and battle maps for dungeons and buildings and so forth, but we're going to focus, at least for this video right now, on the world mapping stuff because that's what's most popular in for Worldographer, and it's also what's gotten the most attention. So I'm going to go to File, New World Kingdom Map, and those of you who've been working with Worldographer for a while, most of this is going to be fairly familiar, but there's a whole bunch of additional stuff. If you're not familiar with Worldographer, this is how you set up the size of the map and how many hexes you want it to be and how large you want those hexes to be by default, but of course you can always zoom in, zoom out. In the Pro version, you can also add more hexes as well, and you can also toggle between having an icosahedral projection of your map and having a flat projection, which is usually what I pick. One of the big changes that people ask for frequently was this configure terrain use. So if you don't want to be using our default terrain and you want to add in your own icons for forests and mountains and everything you can, or you can also use this to generate a world. This will use these terrain types with our built-in generator, but you can use your own terrain that you've chosen. You can also, though, completely change things up and substitute in, instead of forests, having acid pools, and instead of mountains, having basalt pillars, for example, and so forth, and do like a realm of hell or the abyss or something like that if you want. I'm going to close that up, though, because we're not going to do that for the purposes of this demo right now. The other big change, well, a couple of other big changes. One of the big changes that's not immediately visible is the auto update feature. So this does do a live preview. That's been in Worldographer for a couple of years now, but it was limited to having 200 hexes wide or high. Otherwise, you had to hit the button to update it because it took a little bit of time if it was larger than that. However, now we made a bunch of changes, not substantive changes as far as changing the results of the algorithm. More so, just we saw some things that, as you go back through the code, you're kind of scratching your head. That is so inefficient. And because of those things that we took out that were inefficient, we were able to now do this auto update, whether it's, up to 1,000 hexes in either dimension. And, if I just change the random seed, you can see how quickly it does regenerate that for this map. Then the most obvious change to this screen is all these additional checkboxes, which are there because I think that it's, kind of cool to be able to generate a whole world with just one screen and just checking a few boxes on one screen, and then, instantly it appears, which is exactly what I had done for the map that you had seen a moment ago there. But I'm not going to use that for this. We're going to talk about that. We're going to generate a map without these details. And then, as it says here on the bottom, the above can be used via the generate menu when a map is open, because the nice thing there is if you generate, the land first, if you will, then you can tweak all that land before then you generate the coast and generate the rivers, which is similar to the way that the new city that the city-village dialogue has worked for years and years. That's off of the file menu up there, where it does have checkboxes, so it will do it all in one step for you, or you can kind of start with essentially a blank map and do, the main roads, and then the side streets, and then the buildings and so forth, step by step, so you can tweak the roads before you're putting down the buildings, for example. So in the same way as that, we're going to do that. We're going to use that approach here, where we're going to kind of do it in a step-by-step way. Over here, we've got a couple more changes for control over the different landforms that get generated. Not too significantly different, but there's a couple of additions there. So we're going to generate the map. So this gives us a new map to play with, and let's say that I like that as is. I do like the results of the generator in general. So let's say that I do like that as is. Now I can go to this generate menu, and I can generate the coast. And just like on that dialog, the setup dialog, we've got an option to convert the adjacent water hexes to sea, which I generally like, because if you're trying to make a map similar to what the Mystara maps are, you kind of had a lighter blue for those coastal hexes. And then we have a couple of different options here for how to create the coasts. Previously, we had these isometric features, which would go with our other built-in icon set that's kind of a little bit more of a squished look and a little bit more of a realistic look. And so we have isometric features that were there previously and are still there now. Also, previously, we had this use colored polygons for the coast, which is what the other map that I was just showing you. We cancel that. This map here, coming back over to here, same sort of thing. So this does. This uses the features. Okay, I'm sorry. So this uses the features. This is the classic features. Let me zoom in so you get that feel for that. So this just gives you a prettier look to things. The drawback to that is that if you're going to use our functionality of the map levels, we've got a world, continent, kingdom, and province view levels of your map. We also turn off the notes. Those little yellow boxes correspond with notes that are in each of those locations. But anyway, if you're going to use that functionality to drill down, then the features, you would have to kind of be revising your coasts on each level a little bit more in a little bit more of a robust way. Whereas once we go to the map that we are working on, and here if we hit generate and we pull up the coasts, as I was saying, so we've got the isometric features that were there before. We've got the classic sea blue features, which are new. So we also have classic blue ring lord icon stuff. That was an icon set, an add-on, a purchased add-on where you can do these ring lord icons, and that had similar icons to what you just saw for coasts. So we shifted the colors of those to match the Mystara icon set, and so you can pick that as well to get the result that matches the map that you had just seen. Or we can use colored polygons for coast, which is what I'm going to opt to do here. And this is just going to add a little bit of land that's the same color as the adjacent land throughout the map. And just let that go. It's thinking. It is, generating all these coastlines for the entire map all at once. So it's, doing quite a few calculations behind the scenes there. And, this is still a bit of a, we're still making some changes. And so one of the things would be to give you feedback up here on this status bar, which is another new thing, that instead of having pop-ups all the time that you had to close, we opted to just have a little status bar. And, when Worldographer is in a larger size, right now it's only using 1/4 of my laptop, just so that this recording is large enough on your screens. But that status bar gets bigger, for example, if I expand the size of the map there. So, there we go. So what you saw there is that it just generated these little strips of land throughout the whole map, and that makes it a little bit easier when we do dive down and drill down to have the world, continent, kingdom, province functionality, which we'll show in a moment, because that's also been improved. We could delete all those coasts that we just generated if we didn't like it and we wanted to revise it. We can go to generate rivers. And so similarly to what we were just talking about before, where you have features that you can use or shapes. So we're going to do shapes, and I'm going to do a bunch more. Well, maybe not. Maybe just 15. We'll start with 15. You could run this again and again if you're not getting enough rivers, or if you wanted to delete several and do it again. So it's going to go ahead and create our rivers for us. It's kind of cranking away, finding good locations for all those rivers, and then expanding them out. So there's a couple of them there. Here's one there. And it does attempt to go through and kind of try to look at the land heights and go, set up the river so it's going downhill. So this is going into a small lake there, for example. Your results are never going to be perfect. For example, in this case, we can go ahead and say, select this shape, and then take that last endpoint and have it go into the lake, for example. These are just shapes. The coastlines are just shapes. You can edit the coasts in the same sort of way. So next up, this is something that has been greatly revised, is the Generate Nations Empires. For some reason, it was limited in how many, how large each empire would be, to only being like 5 cities or towns or so. So now we've given you, a way to limit the overall size of each one. Now, because we've got 20 empires, I'm going to set this to be, say, 15 is the maximum, but some might be 10, some might be 3. Most are going to be upwards of 15, though, unless your map starts, doesn't support having very many large empires. If you have a smallish map and you set this to be large, then, you might get 1 or 2 large empires to start, and then smaller ones after that. And then, do we want to have varied colors for the borders? Yes, I do, just because I want to see if they overlap, how much do they overlap. And then I can always change those back later. Those borders are going to be just shapes, so we can edit those as well. So here we do have a little status bar update, and to just show us along the way how much things are changing. Let me zoom out some so you kind of get a feel for the sizes of these empires. Snargle Bark, that's probably a gnomish area, and if our label ends up being, if our label ends up covering up one of our towns, we can just move it. These other towns, the labels, the city labels are part of the feature. So you can go ahead and go to feature, and you can select Stickleville, and then you can edit the label here. So these, let me filter this by classic too. Classic. So we went through all the drawers and kind of revise them. Now you've got a way to kind of view many of the symbols and scroll through them without changing the other controls around. So you've got some controls up here on the top. All these will be more consistent. Again, you're seeing a preview version. So the fact that this one here has a little delete label on there, those will be consistent going forward, probably before we even release anything to the public, as far as a preview release instead of just this video. Anyway, we'll revise these colors as well, so that we're not putting a dark color against the black icons, for example, since the majority of them are black. But point is that you're able to scroll through all of these icons while still being able to look at the other controls. And again, if Worldographer were expanded, you would see pretty much this entire thing without scrolling through as well. All right, and we did a similar thing with terrain. Terrain, let me select classic here. And if I expand this out just ever so slightly, then we're able to see a number of terrain icons. Back to generate though. So we've got generate nations and empires is what we just did. Now generate roads is brand new. Brand new as of 2 days ago. In fact, is when I was writing this functionality. And I like to do it in 2 steps. It will always be looking at all of your cities and towns and castles, and it will connect those by default, but you can check these boxes to include the villages and forts and ruins. And I like to do it in 2 steps for 2 reasons. One is I like to do 2 different colors. I like the larger, more main roads to be kind of black and the other ones to be sort of a brownish tan. And then I also like the cities to be more centrally, kind of not on little spurs of roads. I want them to kind of have 2 or 3 connections each if possible. So doing it in 2 steps does pull that off because it's going to try to connect all those cities, and except for a couple at the end of, most cities will have 2 connections and some might have 3. Line type, you can set this up to be either just straight lines, or it's just going to be a straight line with 1 point to 1 point. You can make it fractalish, which will take that line and we'll try to divide it up into little tiny pieces to give it a little bit of a curve that it'll look like a curve, but it's not really. It's just going point, 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 point. Or you can actually use curves, which are going to. Well, I'll show you what the result is here. But this lets you actually have bends to your curves. So if I hit OK, I'm just going to take a moment, and so it's done that. So as promised, let me select one of these and here. And so what you've got here is these yellow points are kind of control points, which will affect how much the bend occurs. And so you can kind of play with those. And the bluish ones are the actual points that the line goes through. Or like I said, you can also set these up to be straight lines or lines that are just many small point-to-point lines that are just simple. So as I said, let's go ahead and go back to generate roads again, and this time, so we'll do the include villages and forts, include ruins, and this time we're going to go ahead and set the color up to be, something like this tan. That's not quite what I want, to be honest. Let's pull up custom color. Custom color gives us this kind of a chooser, and we can then, kind of go crazy with what we might want. I'm not going to play with this for too long, but you get the idea that you can get any color that you might want with this. Maybe more saturation might help. Maybe changing the hue a little bit. There we go. Let's go with that. Like I said, I don't want to play with it for too long. So we set that color up, hit OK, and I don't have any villages in my view at the moment. Let's scroll out. Oh, it's okay, finished. Yeah, here we go. Here's a couple of villages, one down here and one over here. And so you can see that it gave that a different color to connect. Speaking of or as I look at this a little bit, looking at the little icons, we've got those little yellow squares that signify a note. So it's auto-generating a note for each of these features. So we can click on this capital city, and we can see that this is Snargleleaf, and here, which is what it is on the map as well. And here we've got a number of details about it, how affluent it is, why it was founded, and so forth, which you're free to totally throw out and edit, or you can add to it, or you can regenerate it, your choice. So it does all that. And then finally, we're sticking with changes to the World Kingdom generation stuff here, or the World Kingdom mapping stuff. Of course, a lot of these changes, like for these different drawers and how they're reorganized applies regardless of what type of map you're making, including a village or city map or a battle map for a dungeon or something. And there's more changes related to those, which we'll get to in other videos. But again, world and kingdom mapping is the most common use for Worldographer, so we're starting there. But I did want to show the continent, kingdom, province functionality. So this lets you drill down and create a new view of the map. It's all the same data, just, well, added to, there's additional data. But we can say we went 6 hexes across, and this is not new in Worldographer. We've had this pretty much since Worldographer V1, when it was first launched. But one of the things that people wanted was they wanted this algorithm to be much better in that you wouldn't the hex shape of the terrain would be less obvious. For example, in Worldographer prior to this, this entire large hexes, all the subhexes would be hills, except for maybe 1 or 2 that might be kind of a little bit of a random change, where you might have a grassy hill, or you might have some sort of farmland or something like that. But here now we make it so that it's kind of looking at what are all the adjacent terrain hexes about, and kind of weighting those, and then you'll end up with this hex not filled with all hills. The things that are around it have an influence on what the terrain is here. So so that's Worldographer 2025. The World Kingdom mapping changes, the most important, most obvious ones. But we'll get to more videos about the update. We've got a backer kit campaign planned at the moment of this recording. You can go ahead and click a link. We'll provide that in the comments or in the description, so that you can let us know that you want to follow it, which helps us out a lot to kind of predict what we can expect on launch day. And if you're seeing this video during the campaign, of course, you'd be able to pledge to the campaign, and hopefully this gets you interested. We've been working really hard on all these changes to kind of help you make better maps, more effective maps, cooler maps, and you're going to love the results of the work we've done, love the maps that you're able to create here, love the not just the World Kingdom maps, but when we show the other videos too, you're going to see a lot of really cool additions and changes, new functionality for those as well. So I hope you'll back it. I hope that you'll follow it if it's not quite live yet. Appreciate your attention. Thanks a bunch. Bye.